Well, hello there. Let me take this banner down so that you can see me. I want to welcome you to the Poetry of Healing show on blackdoctor.org. And I am Dr. Paulina Van, and I am just so happy that you have joined us this morning, checking in with us this morning. And I am the host of this show. And today's show is all about being vulnerable, what it looks like. Well, first of all, what it is, what it looks like in your day to day life, why it is important to relationships, and then how you can be more vulnerable. So I'll integrate my poetry to help tell the story, and we're going to practice meditation to help us to be better at being vulnerable. And so on this day, it may be morning where you are, it's morning where I am, uh, or it may be evening, or it's close to your rest time. I just invite you to do the centering with me. It takes about 2 minutes, and it's going to help us focus this time to look inside of us and just explore vulnerability. And so I'm going to invite you to lower your gaze or close your eyes if you're comfortable. And then I'd just like you to put your right hand over your left chest where your heart is, and your left hand over your belly. So with your gaze lowered or your eyes closed, I'd just like you to breathe normally and naturally. And focus on your breathing. You know, as the air goes through your nose, you inhale that way, and then out through your mouth. And just notice, is that air cool going in and warm coming out? What's moving in your body as you naturally breathe and where your hands are? Is your belly moving up and down? And the reason I'd like you to focus on that, because I want you to use it and invite you to use it as an anchor. Because when we do meditation, when we focus, when we try to go inside, thoughts come to our mind. And that's okay, because that's what the brain is made to do, think. Uh, but we don't want those thoughts to distract us. And so if you find an anchor while you're breathing, then you can go back to that anchor. So take a deep breath in slowly and out. One more. Take a nice deep breath in and feel how your body is breathing, and you focus on that anchor. And so I'm going to guide you through this brief mindful exercise. It's called mindful listening. It's less than 2 minutes. And during my programs, I'd like you to be just comfortable. If you're kind of still in resting in bed, or you're on your sofa or chair, just wrap yourself up in a blanket and get comfortable. Now, I'd like you to pay attention, because listening is such a critical part of being vulnerable. So I'd like you to pay attention to the sounds that are right outside the room that you are in right now, or the space that you were in, because I know some of you listen to me when you're in a computer cafe. So it may be, an outside cafe or inside, but just listen to the sounds that are right outside the space where you are in. Okay. And it's drizzling where I am, and so I can hear the raindrops falling on top of the roof. The heat is on. I can hear the fan from the heat outside of my room. Now, pay attention to the sounds you hear inside the room, or the immediate space where you are. What do you hear? Are those sounds sending energy? Because sound does have energy. And finally, pay attention to what's going on inside of your body. Listen to your body. How does it feel? I know I did some stretching this morning, so I feel kind of limber. I didn't take my walk because it was raining, but I did some stretching. Okay, so I feel good. Okay. And so take a nice deep breath as we come to the end of this mindful listening practice. Take a nice deep breath in through your nose and then let it out. I wonder, what did you notice? What did you hear as we did our mindful listening? Okay. And so you can keep your eyes uh, closed, your gaze lowered. I'm just going to talk to you right now. And welcome to those viewers who have just joined us. I am Dr. Paulina Van. I'm the author of Regala Healing, which is a book of 100 healing poems to promote self-care, self-understanding, and inner healing. And I host this show, The Poetry of Healing. And we've just completed a centering exercise to kind of set the stage and prepare us and prepare the space in our minds today because we're talking about vulnerability. It's actually a good thing for both your emotional and mental health. Yet today, we're just going to focus on how vulnerability helps us to strengthen relationships and connections with others. So, before we begin, when I do these shows, these topics, they come from my book. I have 100 poems, which is full of vulnerability, and that wasn't my intent, but that's what happened. And so, what I'd like to do, I usually don't start this way, but I think it's really appropriate that I read the poem that is kind of the foundation for this session today. And so it's rightfully titled Being Vulnerable, and it's on page 71 of my book, Regala Healing. See, Regala Healing. Okay. And it's 71 of the physical book. If you have the electronic book, it's a little earlier in the book. So it's being vulnerable. Being vulnerable is frightening. Being vulnerable is enlightening. Being vulnerable draws others near. Being vulnerable creates fear. Being vulnerable transforms my thinking. Being vulnerable gives me an inkling. Being vulnerable is living. Being vulnerable creates giving. Being vulnerable is turning within. Being vulnerable is how I win. And so it's important for me to be vulnerable during the times I am with you. And so I also get a little insight. So you'll have a broad view of things I talk about. So I get a little insight. And today I got insight from the guru of vulnerability, and her name is Brene Brown. And I'm going to put in the chat after the show some resources so you can learn more about her. But she put shame and vulnerability on the map. She brought it to our awareness. And then there's a life coach, which is Lois McKenyon. And I also kind of got some thoughts from her too. So that we're all on the same page, let's start with what is vulnerability? And the dictionary definition of vulnerability might be what most of us had in our mind. I know I had it until I learned more about vulnerability and I experienced vulnerability for myself. But this is what the dictionary has to say about it. And it says it's a state of being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally. That's scary, isn't it? None of us want to be harmed in any way. But Brene, she says it like this, which is a lot more uh, human and appealing to our human side. And she says it's an authentic and intentional willingness. Okay. It's real, and you make a decision to be open to uncertainty, risk, and emotional, exposure in social situations in spite of your fears. Okay. So this involves being willing to accept the possibility of being hurt and the risk that comes with being open with others and clearly yourself. Okay. So, what are some other words that are used to describe vulnerability or maybe synonyms for vulnerability? Okay. So, I have a list, just a list for you. So, exposed, open, susceptible, not successful, susceptible, sensitive, naked, unguarded, unprotected, unsafe, defenseless. But I hope by the end of the show, you will add the following to this vulnerability, and that is joy, creativity, belonging, courage, strength, confidence, security, joy, and growth. Because those two are also possible when you become vulnerable. Now, what is an example of being vulnerable with someone else? Okay, I'll give you some examples. Doing something you know you're not good at. Okay. I know that I'm not good at cooking certain things, okay? But I try it, put myself out there. Another one is sharing a personal story or personal condition that you normally would keep to yourself. I shared my childhood abuse. It may also be something like you're disclosing or telling someone about your struggle with mental illness or an addiction. Okay. Another one is, and this is one I need to do, I've been putting it off, but it's reaching out to someone you want to reconnect with that you haven't spoken to in a long time. So as the time goes by, it's harder and harder to reach out. Right? Putting yourself out there and accepting the risk of rejection, such as being the first to say, I love you to a romantic partner. Telling others how you feel when you're upset with them. Definitely need to breathe before you do that, right? Talking about and owning up to your mistakes. Showing someone that you care about them. That's scary. Are you going to get that back? Establishing clear boundaries with others in your life. Asking for help when you're struggling. I know I struggle with asking for help. Oh, here's a good one. Saying no if you tend to say yes in order to please others. And accepting your imperfections rather than being insecure about them. That's a whole show in itself. Why do we avoid being vulnerable or may avoid being vulnerable? Because there's some folks viewing right now that they have it together. They've embraced it. But those of us who are still working on being more vulnerable. So the fact is that even when you decide to embrace more uncertainty and risks or exposure in your life that comes along with being vulnerable, there are certain triggers that may stop you right in your tracks. So let's take a look at them. Okay. You and I have been hurt before. So we kind of tend to keep people at arm's length. You just don't want to go there again. So you keep people at arm's length. For example, um, I what I do, I try to keep these examples real. So I asked this Jason. I work out with Jason, and I asked him. I said, "Why might you not be vulnerable?" And he said something that I hadn't thought about. Okay, so you you told someone very personal about yourself, and then this person perceives your story as a weakness. Okay, and then they turn around and use it to hurt you in an argument or say it inappropriately in public. Now, I want you to remember that hurt people hurt people. Okay. So send that person some love. The second thing is because you don't think you're going to get it, you don't ask for what you need. So, for example, you deserve that promotion. Okay. You don't ask for it. Well, I've learned a lot from my daughter. I haven't talked about her in a while, but when she wants some more money, she goes directly to the owner of the company and she says, "I deserve more." And you know what? She gets it. She either gets it that day or within that quarter. Okay. You might want more intimacy in your relationship, but you're afraid that if you ask for it, you'll get rejected. And the third one I want to share uh, about that is um, you don't want to change the nature of the nature of a relationship that's going very well. Okay. So, for instance, you're a member of a volunteer group or of a committee or social group, PTA or excuse me, a community group, and the relationships are working well. You're focusing on a common mission, goal, purpose, the activities. But if you bring something serious or personal to the table, will that change the relationship? Are you thinking that you may be judged or looked at differently? I want to give you an example. I belong to a very big church and have been there for many years. And, we tend to sit, well, I have to speak, but members of my church, we tend to sit in the same place, same pew, same every Sunday. And so there was this younger woman who I sat behind her for years. And one Sunday she asked me to be her mentor and she invited me over to her house for lunch. Okay. Lunch or tea, something. And so we sat down on the sofa and we were chit chatting. And she was married. She is married. And, um, you know, she wanted to know more about me. So one of the first things I said to her is that I had been divorced. Um, and the whole tone and tenor of her posture changed. The rest of the visit was very uncomfortable. And although she talked to me at church, she never pursued a mentorship relationship. So it's interesting. So in this situation, I was being vulnerable. Yeah, I was turned away. Okay. All right. So there are benefits of being vulnerable. And I'm going to focus not on the benefits to self, because I want to focus on what are the benefits for relationships with others. So the first thing is I'm going to outline three benefits. The first thing is it builds trust. When you open up to someone, it can be a sign that you trust them. And in turn, they most likely will feel that they can trust you too. And it really sets the stage. It opens the door for both of you to be comfortable displaying vulnerabilities with each other. And it really helps you to feel closer to one another. The second is big C, communication. Being vulnerable results in better communication. So it helps you to be real. When you're vulnerable, you be real and truthful when you communicate your thoughts and feelings. And then when both of you feel comfortable doing that, it can improve communication in your relationship. And we know that communication is one of among, if it's not the top item, finances up there too, but um, if you're not communicating well, your relationship can deteriorate rather quickly. The third one I want to share with you this morning is it, when you're vulnerable, it increases your chances of having your needs met. We all want our needs met. So being vulnerable includes being open about what you need and want in a relationship, and this can help the other person understand and meet your needs, and vice versa. Okay, it helps create a healthy relationship. Um, but, well, yeah, I want to bring to your attention that if someone does not respond to your vulnerability in a positive manner, it may, and I want to emphasize, it may be a sign that it's not a relationship that works or one that needs to be worked on. So, you know, you don't want to just give it up, but maybe it's a sign that this relationship needs some work if it's going to flourish. Next, I want to talk to you about how to be more vulnerable and steps that you can take to become more vulnerable. The first step you've taken just by joining me today and staying with me and learning about vulnerability and understanding what it is and what it looks like for you. And I'm going to help you just before we end, taking a look at what vulnerability looks like for you. Also, accepting that vulnerability is an important part of relationship development. The second is practice vulnerability. For instance, do things that are outside your comfort zone, allowing yourself to grow and be vulnerable to risks that come your way. You'll find that the things that you found daunting or scary are not as scary as they seem. Remember, the unknown tends to be worse than what you learn to be true. Okay. You may find that it's difficult and you aren't good at being vulnerable. Either way, if you don't push yourself outside of your comfort zone, you won't be able to open yourself up to new experiences. You want to take chances that being vulnerable will be more comfortable and natural for you. And the third tip I'd like to give you today is you can get to be more vulnerable by getting to know yourself on a deeper level. So, in order to become vulnerable with others, you need to look inside of yourself first. And the more you understand your true self on a deeper level, the better you'll be to express yourself to others and be comfortable showing vulnerability. And one of the ways I read you one of my 100 poems um, earlier in the show. And one of the ways to be more vulnerable is through meditation. And so I have a meditation by Trish Gaffney, and it's called Befriending Vulnerability. And it's a 3 minute, maybe 2 to 3 minute meditation that will help you to be more vulnerable. But I want to encourage you. So why do I why do I say meditation? Because that's how I became more vulnerable. That's how I wrote this book. I meditated every day, not with the intention of becoming more vulnerable. It just happened. So I have many in here. I think the 100 are all about vulnerability. And I know it is because I had an early reader read my book before I published it. And she said to me, she says, "You're not going to publish this, are you?" And I said, "Yes, I am. Is there a problem with it?" She says, "It's too personal. It makes you very vulnerable." Well, I'm glad. I'm glad I did. So I just wrote down a list here, and I think I'm going to read. Um, the one that came out the gate is called "It Hurts," and I read that several times. But I think I want to read "I'm Aging." Okay, I'm aging. So it's on page 146 of my book, Without Healing, and I will read it. I'm aging. It's scary. I'm aging. At times I'm weary. I'm aging. It makes me teary. I'm aging. Walks are more laborious. I'm aging. My desire is to be victorious. I'm aging. This week I fell. I'm aging. Recovery has not gone well. I'm aging. Pain from the abrasion. I'm aging. Tetanus shot complication. I'm aging. Frightening realization that my body is now vulnerable. I'm aging. My energy simulated corpse. I'm aging. Must find the depleting force. I'm aging. I know it's more than years. I'm aging. There's abundance of fears. I'm aging. I'm more than my thoughts. I'm aging and must embrace. I'm not alone in this race. I have the love of Jesus, and I'll keep my focus on his face. So that's just one of the ones that I just open my heart about. I'm aging. But I talk about people I'm forgiving. Um, let's see. I wrote one after I had a dust up with my husband, and he's listening. Um, and oh, I also wrote one about my control issues, my perfectionism, my near death experience. So, all of these are really making me vulnerable, but it's bringing me closer to people. It's bringing, and it's freeing me. I've taken a load off me. So, let's do our meditation. And again, it's an invitation. So, I'm going to ask you to lower your gaze and close your eyes and just take deep breath in, slow deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And remember that anchor, that breathing anchor. So focus on it, either the breath coming through your nose or exhale out through your mouth or your hand on your belly or your chest, okay? And so when thoughts come, just go back to your anchor. So, with your gaze lowered or your eyes closed, I'd like you to go to a situation. So, in your mind, go to a situation where you felt or feel vulnerable in your life and allow that feeling to make itself known in your body. Where does it live? Where can you feel it? What does it feel like? Is it full or empty, sharp or dull? Is it tight? I know when I feel vulnerable, my throat gets tight. So, where do you feel it the most? And I'd like you to take your breath and breathe into that area. Okay? Breathe into your heart area, breathe into your throat area. And just let your breath expand that area. And allow your feelings to become full and present. To allow yourself to feel. feel this vulnerability. Okay? Remember to keep breathing slowly. Allow your body to keep breathing. And I'd like you to begin to shift and to tell that vulnerability that you feel in your body. Say, I welcome you. Please teach me what you know about me that will help me to be more real and a whole person who I can make friends with all of my feelings, even those I don't want to, even when I feel vulnerable right this very moment. Okay. Now, I'd like you to turn your attention to the places in your body that feel alive and warm and comfortable. And it's different for all of us. And repeating on the in breath and out breath the following. So when you breathe in, you breathe safe and then breathe out well. So breathe in safe and breathe out well. Breathe in caring and breathe out kind. You're feeling vulnerable. And when you feel that way, ask it to teach you. So the next time you sit for meditation, and I ask you to try to do it regularly, know that vulnerability is openness to life itself. So you can rewind this recording and do it. Okay. So as we close, and you can keep your eyes closed, your gaze lowered, and just be in this wonderful, warm place. The focus during this session has been being vulnerable with others. And we learn to be vulnerable is to accept the risks that come with being open with others and to others, especially emotionally. Being vulnerable is something that is fundamental to good emotional and mental. Every time you are vulnerable, you expand your sense of confidence, security, belonging, joy, growth. Ask your vulnerability to teach you. And as we close this session, I ask you to please join me every first and third Sunday here at 9 o'clock live Pacific time. I'd like you to like and share this program if it's been helpful to you and tag others. Leave comments. I do read and will respond to your questions. I'd like you to visit my site, regalahealing.com, and I'm going to put a QR code up before we end. And I have healing and self care resources on the site. I'm also going to drop the resources I mentioned to you, especially Brene Brown, in the chat after the show. And I just want to thank you for joining me today and allowing me to help you kind of trigger your vulnerability, embrace it, and be safe with it. As always, I wish you love and light until I see you the next time. So I'm gonna